Hey, welcome. Oh, I'm on the small screen. Hold on, let me just switch. Go back to that one. There we go. Welcome back, guys. Monday morning, 10 o'clock. And we're on to the third session of the wrist and hand. And as I'm putting this together, I'm thinking that there might be quite a few of these. So we're going to cover off the rest of the connective tissue. Just make sure that everything is on a second. Let me just go to there. Yeah, it looks as if sound is good. Yeah, so we're going to cover off the connective tissue of the hand. And I put a little bit in the show notes there about the kind of structures that help us generate force in the hand, especially with gripping. So we're going to have a look at that and build on some of the stuff that we did last week. I'm going to start to introduce some of the muscles in, and the way that I'm going to do that is do it in sections so that it's easier to get your head around everything. So we're going to have a look at the finger muscles, so the muscles that just act on the fingers for now, and we'll see how we get on with that, and then we'll start to move into the muscles that then affect the wrist. So we need to look at them in two separate parts. So so that's the plan. Morning, Neil. Good to see you. Good to have you back. A couple of weeks in a row now, by the looks of it. Really good. Good to see familiar faces back. Right. Let's just go to this one. Okay, so I'll give you a bit of a clue as to what we're going to do. Just skip back. Right then, so where we got to last week was we'd had a look at the bones of the wrist and of the hand. We'd looked at some of the joints as well, and the way that the thumb moves, the way that the fingers all move. And we had started to look at some of the connective tissue as well. So we were looking at the floor of the carpal tunnel. So let me just see if I can find that video again, because that is a really good one. Just go back to that. Here we go. Floor of the carpal tunnel. Right, let's have a look at this. So this is kind of where we finished off last week. So we were looking at, hopefully the arrows will start coming in. There we go. So we've got the pisiform bone. You've got the hook of the hamate, which is just there, and this is where the roof attaches of the carpal tunnel. So we'd had a look at this. You have a look at the shallow. So this is obviously this part of the wrist, so the palm part of the wrist, and then that's what it looks like with all the connective tissue on. So the bit that we're missing at the moment that we haven't looked at is the roof. And that's what we're going to have a look at next. So I thought I'd just do a quick recap of these. Yeah, so hook of hamate, pisiform, trapezoid, trapezium, and the scaphoid, all on that side. And there you go. So you can see that floor of the carpal tunnel. And as we go through and we have a look at some of the flexors in the wrist, then hopefully you'll be able to see all of the structures around this area. Okay, so and what travels through there. So when you've heard of something called carpal tunnel syndrome, then you'll see what structures could be affected and the reasons why. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Got a few more in the room. Morning, Julie. Good to see you back. And Al, Lots of clinic admin to do. No problem, mate. No, good for you to drop in, and Stevie regulars in again. Really good. Cool. So hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a good understanding of this part of the hand. Okay, so that's what we're really going to concentrate on today. We're going to do some of the other bits because they kind of link in, but mainly to do the front of the palm of the hand. Penny's in as well. Morning, Penny. It's nice to see some of the diploma students using this as a regular slot, so that's really good. Okay, let's just go back to this one. So I'm going to introduce you to something called the retinacular, and we've seen this before nearly a year ago when we first started this, which was around the foot. Okay, so we're having a look at the structures around the foot, and it's very similar to the hand and the wrist. So we've got these muscles that are up here around the elbow, and then they've got these really long tendons that go all the way into the fingers. So what you need is some kind of webbing to keep everything in place. Because if there was nothing between where the muscle starts from and then where the muscle finishes on the ends of the fingers, whether it's flexors or extensors, is if you then try to contract those muscles, the tendon would run from there to there, and there'll be a massive gap in between the bones of your arms and those tendons. So it'll look like flares. Okay, so like in your feet, flared trousers, but flared sleeves in your arms as well. So we need something to pin those tendons down to keep them in place, but that also helps us to generate force. So it's like a pulley system. So if you have a really heavy weight to pull, and you see it on the sails of a ship. So if you're pulling through those ropes, and you've got all of those pulleys that are making the weight of the sail a lot lighter, and that is a very similar structure in the hand. Okay, and you'll see that as we go through. Morning, Sandra. Good to see you again. Thanks for popping in. And I've got a few people again. I think I guess who it might be. Actually, it might be Viola. But yeah, there are some people that I don't know. Seems to be every week you need to click on that link for the eCam. So I see. So it's hi Facebook user. Good morning. Okay, so we've got retinacular, so this connective tissue on the front part of the wrist and on the back of the wrist. So if you remember the names of those regions, we had this is the palmar aspect, so to do with the palm, and then this is the dorsum of the wrist. Okay, so the back of the wrist is the dorsum. So if you think about yourself in anatomical position, with your arms down by your side with your palms facing forward, dorsum means back, okay, towards the back. So the dorsum of the wrist would be facing backwards if you were in anatomical 0. And if you're not sure what that is, have a look right back at the very first videos that we did, which introduces you to the anatomical position and all of the different orientations of things that will help you work out which bits which. The weird thing is though that in the foot it's the other way around. So the dorsum of the foot is the top part of the foot, and then the plantar aspect of the foot is the sole. So blooming anatomy, it's sometimes it's easy, and then sometimes it just throws a spanner in the works and confuses you. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So these are just obviously some drawings of the retinacular. Let me grab my arrow. This has been sending people's cats funny. So this is the flexor retinacular. Just here, so we've got this piece of connective tissue that goes across from the thumb side. Okay, so you've got the trapezium just under the thumb, and then the scaphoid bone just below that. So that's the one that's in that anatomical snuff box area that we talked about. And then across onto the other side where you've got that pea-sized lumpy bit there, which is your pisiform bone. and then just medial and towards the little finger, so inside a bit and up, you've got the hook of the hamate. So what we're looking at is something that covers the top from there to there. Okay, so that's the region that we're looking at here. Okay, so you're going to have the scaphoid and the trapezium on this side, and then the pisiform and hook of hamate on the little finger side. Okay, so that's what they are. And so you can see the structures traveling underneath it. So these yellow bits, these are the nerves. Okay, so we'll obviously add those in as we go. And then we've got some nerves here as well, and we'll have a look at those. We'll have a look a little bit of that today. But then we've got these white bits that are traveling underneath here, going into the fingers. So that's going to be my focus today, just to go through those and show you the structures of those. And somebody mentioned that one of their daughters, I think it was, had something called trigger finger. So we're going to have a look at what that is and what causes it and why you get it and why you have those symptoms. Okay, so we'll look at that. And then on the back of the wrist, so the dorsum of the wrist, this bit here, we've got the extensor retinaculum. Okay, so it's the strapping on the back of the wrist basically that keeps all of the tendons that goes into the fingers here on this side. So if you've got muscles down here that are going to pull the fingers that way, that's into extension. Okay, so bringing the fingers straight is into extension. Bringing the fingers bent is into flexion. Okay, so we've got flexion, folding forward, and then extension, nice and straight. Okay, so that's why this is called the extensor retinacula, because it covers the extensor tendons. Okay, and again you can see some of the nerve supply, so coloured in yellow on this picture. And then these white structures here, which are the tendons that go all the way down into the fingers. Okay, so we're going to have a look at those, and we're going to have a look at those now. Let's have a look at this. Just get rid of that. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at first is this one. Okay, so this is the flexor retinaculum. So this is on the palm of your hand. So the best thing to do with this is if with your hand next to the video, if you use your right hand, because that's what you're looking at here on the video, okay, and you're on your own. Well, even if there are people around, who cares? You can use this as a good visual, okay. Ah, yes, yeah. Okay, can we have a look at Dupuytren's? Yes, we can. That is part of my. If we get round to it today, which we should do, that's part of the session today. So if you've never heard of Dupuytren's before, then we'll show you what it is. Okay, so cool, yeah, perfect. So let's just orientate you again. So this is your right hand. You're looking at the palm. Okay, so if you have your right hand next to it. So this is obviously your thumb side, and we've got two phalanges on the thumb, and then your metacarpal bones just here. Obviously all the metacarpals of the other fingers there, and you've got three phalanges in each of the fingers, and we've talked about that before. So underneath here, in this kind of mess of connective tissue, we've got a little bone which is just underneath the thumb, so the trapezium is under the thumb, and then the scaphoid bone is just below that. Okay, so again, when we were looking at the bony anatomy, those, if you're not too sure of it, then have a look over the last couple of weeks video. We've got the pisiform bone or pisiform bone, which is that, if I do it on the right side, it's that little pea-sized lump on the little finger side. Okay, so that's that little attachment there. And then we've got another little attachment here, the hook of the hamate. Okay, so let's have a look at that now you're orientated. So this is the flexor retinacula. It's like a bit of a sheet of connective tissue. So this forms the roof for your carpal tunnel. So that's the carpal tunnel, and that is the roof. Okay, so if I just pause that there. I've added these arrows on so it makes things a bit easier for you guys to see as well. So the trapezium just under the thumb, and then the scaphoid, which is just below that. Okay, and then you've got, because this is the thumb side, you've then got the radius bone just underneath here. So that's what articulates or joins to this scaphoid bone. Okay, so that's that one. And then on the other side, there we go, you've got the pisiform bone, which I'm just in the way of there. So that's this little pea-sized lump bit here. And then the hook of the hamate, which is just inside it, in a little bit into the palm. Okay, and I said this last couple of weeks, sometimes you can feel the hook of the hamate if you've got quite skinny hands. And if you've got quite chunky, meaty hands, then you're going to struggle feeling that hook of that hamate because it's going to be a lot deeper under the tissue. So we've got this flexor retinacular that forms the roof of the carpal tunnel. So let's have a look at that. So there's a couple of structures here. So there's the carpal tunnel. So you can see there's nowhere. Let me just go back there. There is nowhere for stuff to go. I'm just going to try and pause it in the right place. Hold on. There we go. Nowhere for stuff to go if there is swelling in this area. Okay, and that's one of the problems with carpal tunnel syndrome. So there can be a swelling in the carpal tunnel region, and if you imagine fluid in this area, there's nowhere for it to escape to. It goes up into the flexor retinacular, and then down is the bones, and then obviously all the ligaments that are over the palm of the palmar aspect of all the carpals. So it can't, any fluid can't go backwards and it can't go forwards. So it just stays, and whatever structures are in that tunnel get squished. Okay, and that's one of the we think one of the main causes of carpal tunnel syndrome is that compression around this region. So what you tend to have done is a release type surgery, if that is indeed the issue, where they cut through this retinacular to create more space, so then it doesn't compress those regions. Although I've known, I'm not sure of the figures of it. I'd have to have a look in the research literature, but I've anecdotally, and never take things anecdotally, always look. But in some of the patients that I've seen who've had carpal tunnel surgery done, some of them have had miraculous recoveries, and some of them just have not got better at all. So it does kind of beg the question whether that is the best approach, or whether it may be something else that is contributing to those symptoms. So hopefully, as we go through, been through from the shoulder down the elbow into the wrist, there are lots of areas where things can affect that median nerve. Okay, so just something to think about if you're a therapist and you're dealing with someone with those types of symptoms. So the flexors to the fingers and the thumb go through here. Okay, so they go through this gap, as well as other structures which we'll have a look at as we go through. No problem. Cool. I'm guessing that might be Rach. I don't know. Sorry, I'm late, Teach. No problem at all. Again, if you click on the eCam link in the show notes bit with the advert on, then hopefully I'll be able to see who you are. So apologies. So you're okay at the moment because I don't know who it is. Cool. So that's that. Let's just play this a bit more. Okay, so these are really important bits for the wrist. So we've got two structures. Let me just pause that there. So we've got two structures. You've got this one here, and you can see something that's been cut there. So we're going to have a look at that. And then we've got this bit here where, I don't know whether you just saw, but there's a little hole in there. So that's your pisiform bone just there, and your hook of your hamate will be around there. So let's just have a look at this. So we've got this structure here. So there, you've got the main carpal tunnel, which is that bit. And then on the thumb side, and we know it's the thumb side because this muscle is called flexor carpi radialis. So this tendon and the muscle runs along the radius bone. Okay, so the names of the muscles correlate with the orientation of the bone. Okay, so this is a flexor, so it does that, of the carpi, which are the carpal bones, so it's to do with the wrist, and it runs along the radius. Yeah, so flexor carpi radialis that's the tendon for it there. Okay, so that, and it goes through over the top of the tunnel. So it doesn't go through the tunnel, it goes over the top of it. All right, and there's another little thing over here which is important. You'll see in a sec. I thought it might be you, Rach. Cool. Right, let's have a look at this. So this one, so this is little, remember, look at your right hand. Okay, that's, and you can kind of look down your wrist, and this is what we're looking at now. So that's your pisiform bone there, and this is the tunnel for the ulnar artery and ulnar nerve. And the ulnar artery feeds the kind of lateral aspect of your hand, and the ulnar nerve supplies these two fingers, the sensory part of these two fingers, and a number of other muscles with the motor part. So this is really important for cyclists, because the reason why cyclist gloves have raised areas on certain part of the glove, because what you don't want to do is compress that tunnel. So the pisiform bone just there, so if you imagine resting on some handlebars, and that pisiform bone is resting on the handlebars, you're going to, because the ulnar nerve is very superficial, you will compress the nerve and it will make your fingers go numb. So this is why we've got the cyclist gloves with like a strip here, and then a gap, and then another bit of padding here. So it creates an archway, so you don't compress that nerve. All right, so if you get someone with pins and needles in the fingers here, some of the stuff we've talked about before might be coming from the neck. So C8T1, because that's the origin of the ulnar nerve. But it might not be. It may be a localized compression, and that's causing the problem. Okay, so, and this is all part of the clinical reasoning for therapists. So if you're in the fitness world, you need to send them away to go and get an assessment done of each of these areas, because it could just be the wrist, but it might be their neck. So you need to get it checked either way. Okay, so yeah, if you're fitness side, they need to be examined. If your therapy side, depending on the qualification that you've done, then you'll be able to do the tests. Okay, cool. Let's just see. So there's the little tunnel there for the ulnar artery and nerve. And I think that's it for that video. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that is the that one there. So that's the flexor retinacula. So it's the roof of the carpal tunnel. Okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to skip the extensor, because I want to stay in the palm and do as much of the palm as possible, so that we've got a bit of continuity with the structures that we're looking at. Okay, so let's, if we've got time, then we'll go back to the extensors, but let's just have a look at the next bit. Okay, cool. So the next bit is this. It is the palmar fascia, or palmar aponeurosis. So we've got a really thick piece of fascia that's in the palm of our hand, that helps to protect all of the structures that run underneath it. So let's just have a look at that, an image of that. And here we go. This is something called Dupuytren's contracture. It usually affects the ring finger, sometimes the little finger as well, and it is a thickening of the palmar aponeurosis. So nobody really knows why we get it. It is linked to some medical conditions, but you don't have to have those medical conditions to have it. Yeah, it's a really thick nodule. I've tried to do a bit of work with a few people to improve the mobility of that aponeurosis, and there is really, really limited evidence for it. But we've been using, we're just starting to use things like shockwave therapy into this region, to see if it helps improve the pliability of those structures. And again, usually people have surgery, And if someone doesn't want the surgery or they've had it and it's not really worked, then it's a non-invasive way of trying something else. So when I've used it, again, this is anecdotal, so not scientific evidence, but I've had some really good successes using shockwave therapy on Dupuytren's. So the way that we measure this angle usually is on a flat surface, and you measure up how high that they can flatten their hand, and you measure the distance from the flat surface to the arch of the hand, and we've had a significant reduction in that, so that they're able to then flatten their hand pretty much when there was a good few centimeters difference before. Yeah, there are some non-invasive procedures that you can have for this kind of thing, but if you've never heard of it, it's what Penny mentioned earlier, Dupuytren's contracture it's called. And it so if you see that kind of thing, then there may be, again, this is something that if you're not sure what it is, then you need to refer it out, because there may be another health reason why they have this issue. Okay, so worth getting checked out again. So this is the expanded tendon of something called the palmaris longus, and we're not going to cover the palmaris longus today because we've got too much other stuff to do, but we'll add that in later on. But that's a muscle. It shapes the palm and creates ridges which help improve grip. So it's basically this bit is the palm of your hand, okay, all that flat bit. Here we go. Yeah, so I thought you might have a comment on that. So I'll be interested if the shockwave works, but surgery only offered after 30% of finger flexion. Have it in the foot too. Yeah, it's quite common to have it in the foot and the hand, and it's quite common. It's a familial thing as well, usually. So it's usually in the family. Yeah, we can have a chat about that and what I did. No problem at all. Yeah, no, that's no problem. Yeah, the guy got some. And again, this is one person, so it's not a scientific study. It's just a case study. So yeah, and it really helped him. So, and he tried everything. So I said, well, hands up with that guy as well. I said, look, this isn't going to make it any worse. Shouldn't make it any worse. It will hopefully improve things, because I know how shockwave works and what it does. So it makes sense that it would work. So do you fancy giving it a go? I have no idea whether it's going to help, and he was up for it, and it did help. Cool. So we've got finger pulleys. You might not have heard of these before, but we have several pulley systems within the fingers, and this is what I was saying before about how the structure of the hand, so the connective tissue in the hand, helps us generate force from these really long muscles and the long tendons. Okay, so if you want to lift a heavy object, you use pulleys. You use a pulley system. So if we want to grip, I mean, you can hang off with your fingers. Yeah, when you're rock climbing, you can grip and hang off things with just one or two fingers. It's amazing the strength that we have, and the reason why we've got it is because of the retinacular and then these finger pulleys. Okay, so they make a massive difference to the forces that we can produce. So this is what they are. So we've got so let's have a look here. So we've got the distal phalanx. Okay, we've got the middle. Then you've got the proximal. So those are your phalanges. Then you've got your metacarpal as well. Okay, so that's the one that's more sort of in the wrist. So on the metacarpal, so just below your kind of knuckle line, you have your first pulley. Okay, this is the A1 pulley just in here. And what happens is the muscles from your forearm, they travel up and they go underneath these pulleys. And we're going to have a look at the picture of them in a second. So they go underneath that first pulley, and then there's another one in the proximal phalange just here, so that's the A2. Then there's another one that is on the joint, okay, so the A3, then the A4 in the middle, and then the A5 right on the end on that distal phalanx. Okay, so 5 pulleys dotted all along the finger. And what the pulleys are, they are thickening of connective tissue. So we've got these tunnels that the tendons go through, and then there's a bit of thin fascia, bit of thin connective tissue, and then there's a bit of thick connective tissue. and then a bit of thin, and then a bit of thick. Okay, and it's these thick portions that are called the pulleys. Yeah. So if you imagine having 5 pulleys being able to pull up a really heavy object, you could lift 100 kilos with one arm, no problem at all. And that's a similar kind of structure to your fingers. Okay, so we're going to have a look at those now and what they look like. It's on this one, I think. Bear with me a sec. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so these are the finger pulleys. So right hand out again. So have your right hand next to the screen so that you can orientate yourself. Now we've seen some of these before. So these sections here, remember that this was the palmar plate. So this was the bit that joined all of your knuckles all across there. And remember, it didn't go across to the thumb because we can move the thumb independently of these fingers, but it provided that attachment for all of those, all of that knuckle line. So that's the MCP joint, the metacarpal phalangeal joint. Okay, so that's those ones there. So that's what this is, and it's on the palm side. Okay, so you're looking at your palm on this one. Let's just play this. So there's your flexor tendon sheath. So when we bring in the muscles in a second, the tendons for the muscles are going to go into those sheaths. Okay, and then what you'll see in a second are the thickening of the fascia as we have a look at the pulleys as well. Okay, so let me just pause that there. So there are 2 finger flexors in each of these sheaths on the fingers. Okay, it's different for the thumb, and we'll cover that on the next session. But for the fingers, there are 2 flexor tendons that go to every single finger. Okay, so it's or digit 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so 2 finger flexors going into that, and we'll add those on in a second. So what we're going to have a look at in a sec is we're going to start taking away some of the connective tissue. Here we go. So we've got a thin section and a thick section. So there's a thin section there and there's a thick section there. And those thin and thick sections look like this. If I just pause that there. So these are your pulleys. So there's a thickened section there. So they've dissected away the thin. There's another, that's where the thin section would have been, and there's another thick section there. So these are what the finger pulleys are. Okay, this is what they look like. So from that image that we saw before, this is what they look like in real life. Okay, it's like webbing holding the tendons down. So these are the finger pulleys. You can see where the tendons go through, and the bottom bit there that you can see, that's the back of the phalange. Yeah, so that's the back of the bone. So it's attached to the phalanges and attached to the palmar plate down here as well. And there's the back of the bone just there. So where the tendons run down, it goes along the bone. So the thumb has 1 flexor tendon, and we're going to have a look at that when we get to the thumb. Okay, so 2 for each of the fingers, and then 1 in the thumb. But we'll come to that on another session. Cool. So what we're going to have a look at now is what goes into those pulleys. And we're going to have a look at the muscles of the wrist and hand, but we're going to be focusing on the fingers for today. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that today. So the key ones are going to be these 2, because that's what we've been covering so far. So we've been looking at the palm, and they flex, everything on this side flexes the fingers, so brings them forward. So that's what we're going to have a look at. So we've got flexor digitorum superficialis, however you want to say it, and then flexor digitorum profundus. Okay, so those are the long finger flexors. So we're going to have a look at those. And then the long finger extensors, and the reason why we call them that is because the muscle bellies are here, and then the tendons go all the way down and then into the palm and then into the fingers. And the same for the extensors on the back. So the muscle bellies for these are mainly here. Okay, that's why they're called long finger flexors or long finger extensors. So long finger extensors We've got extensor digitorum, so it extends your digits. We've got extensor, oh, I've spelled that wrong, apologies, digiti minimi, okay? You can guess which finger that extends. And then extensor indicis. And you might be able to guess which one that extends as well, just based on the name. Okay, so we're going to have a look at these two first. And if we get time, then we'll have a look at the others as well. So here are the flexors. Now, it's called flexor digitorum profundus. Okay, and profundus comes from the word profound. So if you're deep in thought, okay, then you're a profound thinker. Yeah, so that's why I put this image here. So if you remember profound and depth of thinking, profound means deep. So flexor digitorum profundus is the deepest of the flexors. Okay, so well, I'm not going. You can pause this and have a read of those. I'm not going to go through those word for word, and we'll show you the videos of them. But this is the length of the muscle here. Okay, and then there is a common tendon, and each finger, the tendon of each one comes from one muscle. Okay, so we've got a common tendon origin on this one. Okay, so that's what we're going to have a look at first. So this is profundus. Let's go back to these, and here we go. Okay, so this is what profundus looks like. So flexor digitorum profundus. So profund or profound means deep, and that's where it attaches. Okay, and that, if I just pause that there, so that is your radius bone. So you can see that there. That connective tissue in between, that is all your interosseous membrane. So in between the bones, interosseous. And then the attachment is really, really broad. Okay, so all the way along all of that area there. Okay, so flexor digitorum profundus. So the deep one, all on that ulna, and then we've got, you can see as the tendons then split, and I've tried to draw on there, here we go, I'll just pause that there. So this one goes to your thumb, so that's why there's 5 of them, so that one just there, and then you got 4, 3, 2, and then 1. Okay, so because this is a right hand, 1 will go to your little finger, 2 will go to the ring finger, that will go to your middle finger, and that will go to your index finger. Okay, so that they all go through your carpal tunnel, which we just saw, and then into the palm, but then it's covered by the palmar aponeurosis. So that's why you can see these here, because the aponeurosis has been taken off. Okay, so we can see that as we go through. So that's your flexor digitorum profundus. So, put that back. So it flexes your digits and it's deep. Okay, that's basically what that means. Right, let's just go back to those. So that was that one. So origin for that, medial aspect of choroid. So you might remember that from the elbow, and then the medial surface of the ulnar body. So it's all on that ulnar surface where this flexor digitorum profundus attaches. And then if we have a look at the next one, so flexor digitorum superficialis. If the other one was deep, this is going to be superficial. So this is the one that's closest to the surface of the skin. Okay, this is the one that that may be affecting golfer's elbow. Okay, so that medial epicondylopathy, because it attaches onto the medial epicondyle. Now the profundus doesn't. It attaches deep onto the ulna. The superficialis attaches onto the humerus. Okay, so we've got 2 really long muscles that attach in this region of the forearm and then go all the way down right to the tips, well, sometimes to the tips of your fingers. So we're going to have a look at that. Now, there's a little note on the bottom here. So there is independent flexion of the fingers available with the superficialis. Okay, you can't get that with the flexor digitorum. Yeah, it's different with the flexor digitorum, but you get independent flexion. So this is how you test it. So if you're a therapist, to test superficialis, then you have to individually flex the fingers whilst keeping the other ones still. Okay, like that. And you shouldn't bend the end of the finger either. So the movement should come from the metacarpal phalangeal joint just there. So you pin everything down and then you just move the finger like that, and then you know that that part of superficialis is intact, and you go through all of the fingers. Okay, so that's how you would assess them. Right, let's have a look at this. So this is superficialis. Okay, so that's profundus. This is superficialis. So this is on top. So superficial, closer to the skin. Really, really big, broad muscle on this one, and then it attaches on that medial epicondyle up here. Okay, so that's what, like I was saying with golfer's elbow. So there you go. So you got medial epicondyle, and then a little bit on the radius as well. Okay, so there's quite a big attachment on the radius there too. There is a little gap just there, and that's where your median and ulnar artery both go under. Okay, so they both go under there. And then these are the tendons for superficialis. So this image now has got both on. So it's got profundus, the deep ones, and superficialis. So if we have a look at this, there's your flexor retinacular, so the carpal tunnel. Just going to move me out of the way. They both go into a synovial sheath in the palm. And then you can see, look, there's two tendons there. So the superficial one is going to be superficialis, and the deep one is going to be profundus. Don't worry about those. We're going to do those another time. Okay, so you've got muscles called the lumbricals. We'll talk about that later. So those have been removed. And now this is the bit that we were looking at before. Okay, so this should hopefully tie up the last bit with this bit. Okay, so this was the plantar plate area. And do you remember before when it was just the holes when we were looking at the finger pulleys? So these are now the tendons going through those pulleys. So this is the MCP joint, metacarpal phalangeal. So where your metacarpals and your phalanges meet. So that's your knuckle line. Okay. We're looking at the palm again. Okay. So we're looking palm side. So these are your flexors. So let's have a look at these. So you can see as they travel along, and they'll be going underneath the pulleys. So superficialis splits in two and then attaches up here. Okay, they've just taken out profundus, so this is where the insertion of superficialis is. Okay, so it's around that middle phalange, so just after that joint line, and then that's profundus, so that's the deep one, and that continues to the tip of the finger, and that is really important because superficialis stops before. Let me just get back onto the big screen. So superficialis stops before the tip of your finger, yeah? So it doesn't have any action on the tip of your finger. So if you block your finger and do that, well, I'll try and block it completely. Just trying to cheat and get in the right angle and do that, that is pure flexor digitorum profundus. Okay, so you can check whether they've got a problem with their profundus by just wiggling the end of the fingers. See, my other one's going as well. It's because they're all joined. So profundus is all joined. So when I try and move one, they all want to go. Yeah, so you have to really block it and just try and get that end of that little finger to wiggle. Okay, I can't help the other ones going as well. Cool, so that should hopefully make sense now with your hand examination if you do that kind of thing, and why if you block the rest of the movement, just wiggle the end of the finger, then you know that profundus is good. For superficialis, remember I said you have to block all the other fingers. Well, I just do that, and then you You try not to bend the tip of the finger because profundus attaches right at the top. It will also help with finger flexion. Yeah, so you try to eliminate using profundus if we know that that's working okay, by keeping the finger dead straight and just moving from the MCP. And then I know that superficialis is okay as well. Yeah, so that's if you're doing a hand exam, those are the kind of things that you need to do to test both of those flexors. Okay, cool. What time are we at? We only did 2 muscles. The hand is so complicated. So it might require another watch. You never know. Yeah, hopefully that has made that make a bit more sense for you now. Okay, so we've had a look at where things go through that pathway under the carpal tunnel, into those fingers. What I'm going to do next is stick to this part, but have a look at the muscles that also flex the wrist. So remember we saw carpi radialis, I think it was flexor carpi radialis. Yeah, so there are lots of other carpi named muscles too, and we'll have a look at where they go to, but they're more involved in the wrist than they are with the fingers. Okay, so we're just breaking it down into parts. Cool. So I'll see you next week. See you Monday, 10 o'clock. And yeah, good luck with your revision of finger anatomy. Cheers, guys. See you later.